Hey, everybody. Happy July 11th. It is Friday, and you are live on Shally's Alley. Welcome back. Yeah, peace. If I do that, I think I get some kind of weird effect. Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know what that does. So here we go. Super excited. My buddy Steve Bartel is our guest today. Steve started a tiny little company you probably never heard of called Gem. It's like a little diamond. Yeah, you probably never heard of it. Yeah,
Nah.
never have. Yeah, it changed names. It used to be called something else, but it's all good. So thanks for joining us today, man. Quick background for those of you that don't know. So Steve is actually the founder, co-founder, and CEO of Gem, and frankly, one of the sharpest minds that reshape modern recruiting, scaling of teams. Has taken Gem from a startup all the way through to a company that is essentially creating some of the innovations that others are following.
Yep.
And he's got a bit of a history. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit, real quick, about you before we jump into the questions, Steve?
Yeah, that sounds great. Before I do that, super cool theme music. Do I get to customize that next time? Like, do I get my own theme song? That was a fun intro.
Yeah, I can get you a theme song. This thing now is now does generates music. So believe it or not, it's computer generated music. So I can do like chill and
What?
yeah. So check this out. Computer generated.
Yeah,
It's so weird. It's got like
that's so
lo-fi.
cool.
There's some genres that I've never even heard of, like minimal house. What is minimal house? I have no idea what that is. Let's play that. Minimal house. Oh, talk about like next gen music, right?
Wait, that's wild. And so that's all AI generated?
A complete, yeah. So no digital rights or anything. Yeah.
Is that through the streaming platform you're using, or
Yep.
do you have a separate tool for that? Oh, wow.
It's this streaming platform. I do have Stream Deck and I use that a lot, but I like this kind of other stuff. And yeah, but most of the time I want to focus on my guest, so I end up not playing music. Um, it's built in, so it's pretty sweet. Yeah.
That's so cool. I got to get my team on this platform. This is so cool. I mean, the future is it's going to be interesting with AI. I'm sure we'll probably spend some time there today, but it's yeah,
I have
great
a
to be
question
here.
about that, although it's kind of a beaten up topic, but I do have a question about that. Um,
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit about, like, you're a recovering engineer, and
Yes.
you used to be at like you got your formal, I guess, engineering leadership at Dropbox, but you were at Facebook, you were at Blizzard, uh,
Yep.
and then you decided. I mean, my first question would be like, why? You had a good thing going with Dropbox, and then you're like, I'm just gonna go and start something, and deal with recruiters. I mean, what happened there? What went wrong
Oh,
in your life?
well, first of all, I love it. Oh my gosh, like um, one of the things that drew me to the space was I loved working with our recruiting team at Dropbox. Um, I feel like as an industry, like recruiters are and I myself have done a ton of recruiting, and I just feel like any of us who got into the business, like we're people. Like we do it because we care about candidates, we care about bringing in the right people, and um, a lot of us care about the impact that that has on each person that gets hired. Right, that's like life changing, and so
You've been
I
a
think
recruiter
though,
for a while, and you've had any success. I mean, I put that down as one of the top three motivators. People don't usually get into recruiting intentionally. It's unusual. It does happen. I used to teach a class at Temple University where we were taking people from their HR MBAs directly into recruiting, but it's unusual. So
it is.
most of the time we fall into it, but it's one of the top three reasons we stay. Like, it's not one of the reasons we get in, but once we're in, it's one of the top three reasons why we stay in recruiting, because of um, that win feeling, especially when you make a hire, make a placement where the person and the job would never have met under any other circumstance. Like, you're
Yeah.
literally the mental that made that happen.
Totally. And, I think you're right, actually, now that I think about it. I didn't have a taste of that until I started doing a ton of recruiting myself at Dropbox. And we can get into that in a sec. But, I think the thing I've come to realize, now that I've been doing my own hiring for, 15 years, but also just been in the industry for so long is that initial rush of making a hire. The even more meaningful thing is like seeing somebody like grow in their careers and get promoted like year after year after year, and seeing that like life-changing opportunity like come to fruition. The post hire, as we think about the impact that we have, like that is profound. But yeah, no, I think like Dropbox was actually, as somebody who was on the engineering side, I was thrust into managing engineering teams less than a year out of school.
Yeah, you went to MIT and with a computer science
Yep,
degree, right? You graduated
that's
in
right.
10, so I mean you haven't even been in the workforce for all that long, considering. So yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
it's
amazing.
been like 15 years, right? Yeah, and I've only had two jobs. I've had, well, I interned at Facebook and at Blizzard, and those were incredible, places to work. And Blizzard was a little bit of a passion internship for me because I grew up playing all the games like StarCraft 2 was actually the game I got to work on.
Oh, nice.
That was a dream internship. And not only that, I got to build the AI for StarCraft 2. So whenever like a unit would cast a spell, it would run my little AI to decide who, you know, is now a good time, or who should we target? And it was just such a cool first industry experience, and kind of the dream internship. But yeah, Facebook was incredible too. But I think like Dropbox, I joined when it was 25 people, and we
Wow.
just started hypergrowth. Right around the time I joined, it was this inflection point. For a long time, actually, the growth of headcount had been relatively flat. Um, the company was 3+ years, and it was 25 people, um, but the business had been taking off.
Okay.
Uh, and so I think Drew realized, wow, we've got something. We've got like lightning in a bottle here. We just need to like hire as quickly as we can to go after the opportunity. And to his credit, and also to Aditya's credit, the VP of engineering that he brought on board from Facebook, actually, they both instilled in all of us that our number one priority, the single biggest way any of us could have an impact,
Was hiring.
was hiring, right? Because like, and especially as like managers, I was thrust into
Steve
management.
Ballmer move right there.
What's that?
That's a Steve Ballmer move. I used to work at Microsoft. He was big, and I mean he was very much like, our new hires, our hires are our lifeblood. If we don't hire the right people, and he put a lot of emphasis on recruiting. So yeah,
Totally. I mean, I think that's smart. I think that's really smart for every
so
CEO.
that's how you got into recruiting then.
It is, yeah. And so I was like an eng manager straight out of school, like 9 months into after graduating. I was managing an engineering team because we didn't, we were growing so quickly. I was the most senior person in the area, and like we needed a lot of help. And so for many years there, I just really leaned into recruiting because the single biggest way I could increase my impact, it wasn't like going and writing more code. It was, how do I, bring more great people into the business? And so I got to do everything. I, obviously did a lot of the things that most engineers do, tons of interviews, referrals, working with my own team on like referral jam sessions, going on campus, giving talks, all that good stuff. But actually, I got to like really lean in some other cool areas. So one year I actually revamped our entire referrals program with our head of rec ops. Like her and I
Hey, I
teamed
did
up.
that at my last company as well, from
You
scratch.
did?
Yep.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, I mean, that is so
It
cool.
was one of those like people were just being bombarded with like, "Hey, referral bonus," and it wasn't working. So
Yeah.
completely revamped it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that we could spend a whole session on that, but like
I
that
know
was
that's
our
a topic for the next one.
lifeblood.
Jem doesn't
Yeah.
have a referral platform, does it?
No, so yeah, let's get back on top. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I love to stop shooting the breeze on anything recruiting related. So yeah, but I revamped our referrals program. I actually was my own full cycle recruiter to hire a few data scientists. This is a fun one.
Okay.
Back in 2013, did you ever recruit for data science?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Oh boy. do you remember 2012, 2013 era of data science before it was like a real thing?
It wasn't even really like a thing yet, right? Yeah, they had it was big data and people were calling themselves data scientists who were actually analysts
I
that
know it.
really like do you when you say data science, do you mean to tell me
True.
that you're actually writing statistical analysis programs
Yes.
with R or something similar, or are you using a spreadsheet to make a chart? Because that's not
Or
data.
just running SQL queries. Yeah, no, I know. It was so
Literally.
confusing. It was so nascent. The field was just developing, and we were like going after PhDs with quant like backgrounds,
Yeah,
people that could help us analyze the hundreds of millions of user data,
big
you
data.
know, billions and billions. Yeah, big
Right.
data. And so I went and hired our first few data scientists. I still remember I was like, hey, Aditya, I think it would be really impactful if we built a data science team. He's like, yeah, go do it. And then I went to our recruiting team and I was like, hey, like, I just got the green light to go start a data science team. And they're like,
What's data
yeah,
science?
well, but also they're like, yeah, go do it. Like
Oh
we have this
no!
we have this tiered role system, and it was really interesting because we were growing so fast. Even recruiting for recruiters, we were struggling to keep up because we were tripling headcount every year for the first 4 years I was there. And yeah, they're like, look, like we've got all these other higher priority roles. Like we'll have somebody that can help with scheduling, but you have to do all of your own, sourcing and even like full cycle seeing them through the process. And so, I got access to our ATS. I was like, the recruiter on the job. And then
And you
I
still
posted a
have your
job.
hair. That's amazing.
I know. Well,
Like I would have just been, yeah, I would have been pulling the word ATS literally makes the back of my eyeballs itch so much that I want to pull them out.
you got to get on Gem ATS, my friend.
Well,
It's
you got to give me a demo, man. Come on, bro. I'm also start to learn. But yeah, the
well,
old school ones, and what, yeah, I'm actually doing a whole comparison chart right now. And anyway, so you
oh my God.
and you're like, wow, this is crazy. Why is it all so bad?
Why is it so bad? And actually the hardest part of it was like we posted a job. I, went and gave talks down at Stanford to the PhD grads. Like, we
They took you at Stanford.
started.
They throw a bunch of rotten eggs at you because you came from MIT. I mean, come on.
I know, and I was an undergrad from MIT
Oh,
who had
gee,
no like background in statistics or like data science, and I was going
you're like,
and
what's this
giving
guy
this
doing here?
talk to like 300 Stanford PhDs with like quant backgrounds and like highly technical backgrounds, and yeah, they didn't laugh me out of the room. Actually, that's where I met the first person that we hired. Was down there, but also like it wasn't enough. Like we needed to hire a lot of data scientists, and this was a nascent field. And so I talked to our recruiting team. They're like, "Oh yeah, you got to go source."
Yeah,
And so I was like, "Well, what's
just
that?"
like that. Just gotta go do it. Yeah, like
Yeah,
no big
what's
deal.
that?
This works.
So I got on LinkedIn and I started sourcing people and like sending them an email. And I was like, I'm not nobody's responding to me. I want to ask my recruiting team and talk to like one of our most experienced sourcers, this guy DJ. Back then, he's like, oh yeah. You got to use email because like these people don't have their LinkedIn notifications on. I'm like, well, how do I find that? He's like, oh, like go use this tool or actually check these 5 tools to find email. And then I started using email and I was like, I'm still not getting the responses I need. Oh, he's like, you got to follow up. I'm like, oh man, all right, I got to track this stuff in a spreadsheet and see who I've followed up with and send all these manual follow-ups. And oh my gosh, I mean, that whole experience felt really broken.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I think like all that, I mean, look, I even back then acquired 2 companies that I sourced, one of them for like acquihire. Like that's how important recruiting was, and like these were
I
all
like
the different ways.
sourcing. My friend Maureen talks about that all the time. Like sourcing companies to hire the company by buying the company. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And I was actually doing it through my network. I was just reaching out to smart folks, seeing who might be looking for a home, and we hired some great people that way. But we were just trying everything, and so I feel like Dropbox was where I really got into like sharpen my skills. And fast forward 5 6 years later, I mean, it was really just 1 2 years after Dropbox. was like, man, like recruiting was really tough. Like maybe we should go start something in this space. And there was all this amazing technology that was being built for like sales and marketing teams.
Yeah.
And
There's always
me and
been
my
that
co
story of like, yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years and I've multiple times tried to like adapt technology that was being used from, sales, affiliate referral programs, multi-level marketing, all these other
yep,
technologies that were out there. And sometimes some of that stuff works, but eventually there's just a deep chasm that appears between marketing and sales or digital marketing and all of that stuff, all of the non-recruiting related and recruiting. There's this big chasm that forms, and it's impossible to get over unless you fix some of the things that don't work in marketing. Because, for example, you have the two-way relationship, right?
yep,
Marketing
yep,
is a one-way relationship.
yep,
Sales is
100%.
two-way, but with sales, you have one person who's the decision maker, and in
Yes.
recruiting, you have three. So there's these big breaks.
And even more than that, like more breaks, like I think in sales, you care a lot less about long-term relationships because your stakeholder at a company switches jobs and now they're no longer relevant to your account.
Yeah,
Whereas in recruiting, like we get to know people and we track them through their entire career.
you're
And so
supposed to.
like
Yeah,
long term, well, yeah, I mean, we're supposed to if we have the right tech to help with that.
and yeah, if you
Hint, hint.
buy into that, philosophy, sometimes it's very
Yeah.
transactional too. But yeah,
No, I guess that's you're right. I do think a lot of modern tech companies and even large enterprises are thinking that way, though.
yeah,
Even if a lot of other recruiters might be a little bit more transactional, but I firmly believed in actually at Dropbox we believed it was all about long term relationships. We had these spreadsheets there that we used to call our list of gems.
uh-huh.
Ah, that's where it came from, right? Yeah.
Moments in the rough.
So yeah, exactly. Our gems, and we literally called this. It was like Steve's gems, Shally's gems, and these were the like 10, 25, maybe 50 tops people that like we went to school with or that we had
Yeah.
worked with in previous internships or previous jobs where it was
People
like
you would
we
hire
could
if you could.
hire them in an instant, right? Of course we're going to put them through the interview process, but like it was our short list, our gems,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that was the inspiration.
That doesn't fit in an
Um,
ATS. There is no, the ATS, the birth of the ATS. First of all, if I had a time machine, people ask me that question. What would you do if you had a time machine and you can wave your magic wand and go back in time or whatever? The first thing I'd do is I would abort the ATS. Like I would prevent it from existing at all. It's the absolute worst thing that's ever happened to our industry. It
I know.
literally exists only to mitigate risk. That's it. And it doesn't track applicants. The applicant tracking system tracks requisitions,
I know.
applicants.
Exactly. Exactly. And actually, many of the large, like legacy enterprise ATSs still don't have a person record.
Nope.
All they have is an application record. And so, talk about
Right.
transactional recruiting.
Or
How do
requisition.
you write a rec and like an applicant? And like, how do you track relationships over time when you
Yo,
have
that perspective right there is
seven?
my, yeah.
Yeah.
People ask me all the
So,
time, dude, I get this question a lot. Why can't we use an ATS as a CRM? I'm like, it's a 90-degree. They don't intersect. It's because of what you just said. The other
yeah.
question that I get too is why can't we use Salesforce or something like that as a CRM? I will tell you this. I don't know if you knew this, but I was the first person. My friend Eric Jacob and I were the first to do a recruiting CRM using Salesforce before Salesforce was, we're talking about 2003.
Wow. That's so ahead of the curve.
And yeah, and because I needed something to do recruiting CRM and the ATS didn't cut it, and none of the sales CRMs out there. I mean, I had tried InfoPath, if you even remember what that is, Dynamics, a whole
Yep.
bunch of them, and it didn't
Wow.
work. And so Salesforce was the one that had the most DIY stuff where you can go in and and like create things. And so I made it work. It was absolutely not because it was Salesforce. It was awful because it was some guy that doesn't know anything about databases. Like I was barely an engineer inventing a recruiting CRM back in 2003. But people still ask me why can't we use a CRM for sales? I'm like, even that doesn't, it doesn't, imagine if you had a sales CRM where instead of selling to a person your company's product, you're selling them every company's product. That
Yeah.
would be the, like, try that.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. You can't, it
Yeah.
doesn't fit.
No, you're totally right. Cause like every job is different. Every rack is different. Yeah, no,
Every job is a
and
different product, basically.
there's a lot of differences. I mean, I think like the data model needs to be different, and some of the differences we were talking about in recruiting about being able to track long-term relationships over time, because like as soon as your stakeholder changes, you don't care about that person. In sales, there's this whole ecosystem around data enrichment,
Right.
which you upload these big lists of contacts and work emails, but like in recruiting, you want to use personal email. That's evergreen. It doesn't change over time. Um,
Yep.
and you don't have recruiting ops teams that can go data enrich your database, like so everybody's like searching for these people and trying to look up their emails. And so yeah, I mean there's like a myriad of reasons why you need something purpose built for recruiting. But the fascinating thing is like, Nick and I, my co-founder, we were tech people, we were engineers, but we just saw our friends falling into these traps of like going and starting companies like with technology in search of a problem without first validating the problem that was
Technology in
real.
search for a problem is about how I would describe most of them.
Yeah, and actually you look at most recruiting startups, like or startups in the recruiting space, and a lot of that's just like tech in search of a problem, because some engineer realized that recruiting's hard but doesn't actually have like the full cycle recruiting experience, or like hasn't been in the life of a recruiter to know what the problems are. But still, we were like super paranoid about that, so we were like, we got to go talk to 50 other companies that aren't Dropbox and Facebook and validate that this is a problem, because like we didn't want to go build something for just two companies in the world. What if nobody else thought this way? And we did it, and we talked to 50 other companies before we wrote a single line of code, and we found something really remarkable. Well, first of all, everybody had this problem. Everybody was thinking about recruiting more like sales and marketing. But the cool thing was, just like you, back in 2003, 10% of the most cutting edge recruiting teams were using sales tools
Right. Because
for
it
their
was the
sourcing.
closest thing you could, yeah.
Yeah, it was. And
That's what, it's not quite there, just it was closer than everything else. I ended up at Microsoft making my own later on after the Salesforce one, because once I left Google to go to Microsoft, and wanted to create a CRM there. Obviously, I couldn't do Salesforce given that you kind of got to eat your own dog food.
yep.
So I ended up creating it from scratch with InfoPath, which was later absorbed into Dynamics. And to this day, I'm not sure if anybody's ever been able to outdo this, but it was the largest database of computer science graduates with more than 5 years experience in the world.
Cool.
It had
Cool.
250,000 people in it in
Wow.
2004, 2005 in InfoPath.
Wow. I
But
love that.
it worked because it was a homegrown CRM for recruiting, and then eventually InfoPath got sunset and
Mm,
whatever. But
tragic. But yeah, I
can I
mean,
ask you
we,
about AI though? Because I
yeah,
know you wanted to touch on that, and I did have a question.
sure.
You've built a platform, and you were in AI before it was, you were in data science before it was data science, you were in AI before it was cool, right? Like
Yeah.
me, I was in robotic process automation for years, doing all these RPA with Microsoft. You remember
Cool.
Power
Yeah.
Automate and stuff like that? Yeah, that's what AI is now, right? It's just the evolution of that. But anyway, you
Yep.
have this AI that can remember conversations from 18 months ago, and I can't even remember where my keys are. Um, where's the line that you draw between human memory and machine memory in recruiting? More specifically, are we too quick to outsource our intuition to tech?
mm, that's a really good question. So I actually think tech has already augmented our memory big time. I mean, even just think about like a digital
But
calendar.
ChatGPT doesn't know where my keys are.
Unless you have a tile or an AirTag.
That's what I did. I got an AirTag.
Yeah, exactly right. And so now tech knows where your keys are. No, but seriously, like tech has been outsourcing or like augmenting our memory for a long time. Like,
Augmenting, yes, augmenting. It's
yes,
the
not
outsourcing part that's my question.
yes.
Where do you draw the
Okay.
line? You know,
So here's my vision for how this stuff works. So first of all, what you're referring to is we have some really amazing AI. All right. So my unique perspective on AI is that it can't just be a bolt-on point solution.
that's right.
Like this is Gem's
Or the,
perspective on the market
the,
that your AI,
it's
what's
got
that?
to be native. It's got to be native, and
It's got to be native, and it has to be a part of like an all-in-one recruiting platform. And here's why: the key thing that nobody realizes in the space. There's all these AI upstarts, but nobody really realizes. Even most buyers don't realize. The hard part about AI is no longer the algorithm. OpenAI, Anthropic, like they've all
we
solved
have
that,
that.
and it's
We can buy that
getting.
now. Yeah.
Any of us can go see it for ourselves, like with Claude and ChatGPT. It's so good, and it's getting better like every month. And so that's not the hard part. That used to be the hard part. To build
Right.
effective AI, you used to have to hire like whole teams of machine learning experts, deep learning experts, and
That was the
train it on like,
lead. It wasn't really. It's
yeah,
really still not AI. It's still, language models, but the
yep,
leap was the ability to be to bring it to every day. So it's kind of like I refer to it as
yeah,
the right. You can't build software that uses the internet as an add-on. The software has to be built internet native, and so that's what's happening is it
yep.
has to be built AI native. It's the same
It
idea.
does. It does. Yeah. So all of the software needs to be built AI native, and here's one of the key reasons why. Outside of just like wanting fewer tools, everybody wants fewer tools, but like the key reason why is the hard part about AI is what context, what data does it have access to make smart decisions, to make smart recommendations. And like a really simple example is like you wouldn't want an AI sourcing bot going out there and just burning down and spamming the market without any context about who these people are, especially if you're like a company with more than 10 employees, right? Like any reasonable company that has like done some recruiting, like you don't want it to like go shoot itself in the foot. So you wouldn't want AI reaching out to somebody that your recruiting team already talked to 2 months ago.
Okay,
You
so this
wouldn't
is
want
where
it.
I'm going. The reason
Yes.
I'm asking you this is where I'm going with this is I want to know where that line is because
Yes.
I'm writing a research paper now about augmentation versus automation. And from the data that Claude provided and a few other places, it's pretty obvious that most of the people who know what they're doing that are using these tools, they're in Claude like me every day, and they're in, ChatGPT every day. 80, 90% of what they're doing is augmentative. Very
100%.
little of it is this agentic. And so my point, Steve, is this whole agentic thing. I don't think we're there, and I don't think we
No,
should be there because of what
no,
you
that
said.
100%. No, you're speaking my language. Look, a lot of companies are calling their AI agentic. Like maybe Gem will even brand our AI as agentic. It's way more agentic than like
Sure, from
most,
a
but like
branding point of view, I get
from
it.
a
But really, it's 20 people in Ohio that are doing all the manual stuff that the AI can't just, they're lying. It's the same
yeah,
thing.
no,
It's been going on for decades.
totally, totally, and that's been the state of AI forever, right? Like
That's my point.
anyone. Exactly. So AI is not replacing humans, it's augmenting humans, and we're seeing this across every industry.
And
And
I'm
so
happy for that. I just don't like it when people say, well, I'm not going to buy your product because it doesn't have agentic. Like, well,
I
nobody
mean, that's why like everybody's marketing their AI as agentic, but Gem's
it is.
approach is different. Like we are 100% in the co-pilot augmentation camp, and we believe that's the future. That's the way to make AI that actually works. And anybody that's selling AI that can fully replace humans is selling vaporware. And
Where
we've
does that
seen this
line
play
fall,
out.
though? It's not that replacing humans because we know that's not happening.
It's
But
not
where is
happening.
that judgment line where we get into like, I have a hard line on ethics, and it's a pretty hard line. I've been speaking about it openly, but I want to hear from a tech person that has a product in the space. Where's your human judgment line where it would be best if we don't let AI make those decisions?
Yeah, great question. So um,
Help us with everything else.
I
There's a million ways to help us, but not that.
Totally. Here's a really good example. In my mind, like an AI agent that
Uh,
helps you with
do
your
so.
inbound
Right.
applicants, it shouldn't actually be rejecting candidates.
Yeah.
It should be speeding you up as a recruiter. It should be like so it what it should be doing is like giving every candidate an equal shot regardless of when they applied. Because today the state of the world is the default is you post a job, you get
Yeah.
thousands of applicants, and a recruiter is like, oh my god, I got first of all, I'm going to go turn that job off. I'm going to take it off my career site, and now
Wait, 2,000
the best
applicants.
candidate might not even get a shot at the role, right? But then the other thing that happens is like a vast majority of the people that are hired are like in the first 100 200 people who apply, and that's not good either, because if you find your dream job and if you're the best fit for the role, you're not getting a fair shot if you're applicant number 2000. So 20 plus, maybe closer to 30% of our customers get thousands of applicants for a single role. And so without AI to help like sort through that and elevate some of the like short lists to the top, it's not giving everybody a fair shot. And so that's where I believe AI can really help. But what it shouldn't do is go reject people for you,
Right.
because now you're running into ethics issues about like,
That's my line right there. Now there's ranking and scoring and sorting and weighing and all that stuff, but the
yeah,
moment it is making a decision,
exactly.
yeah. So it's like let me put it in terms that I think a lot of people who are listening would would be able to relate to here. In my opinion, after being in the business for a very very long time and helping more than 500 companies build their sourcing teams, I can tell you without a doubt that the most value we offer sourcing and recruiters that source, the biggest value that we offer is decision support. We are invaluable and irreplaceable when it comes to providing leaders or hiring managers with the information they need to make a decision. And so
Yep.
that's why when people say we need to measure the sourcers based on their number of hires, I say stop, because if as a sourcer, put yourself in your hiring manager's shoes when you were back at Dropbox. Let's say that you had an opening and you only had one finalist, one candidate. That's it. You have no choice. There are zero choices. And I, as the sourcer, come in and I present you with a second candidate that is pretty good. You even consider them and interview them, but
Mm,
ultimately you decide to go with your original candidate, your gem, right? However, I now enabled you to make a decision that you
totally.
previously were unable to make. In the book of Let's Count Hires, I did not do my job.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not
Yeah. No,
correct. I very much did my job. I gave
it's
you
way more nuanced. Yeah.
choice, decision support. So I
Yep.
see AI exactly the same way. It's providing me with decision support. It's not
Yep.
eliminating anybody, but it is helping me surface. Maybe at another time, I'll tell you about the rubric and things that I'm building to hire the country's top scientists. But I'm doing it to include people that were previously left out, just like you just said,
Yep. Yeah.
because it's decision support for me. Then I take my top 20 and send them to Steve, and Steve measures them against his gems and makes the decision. But you're the hiring manager. I'm never going to make the hiring decision unless I'm
Yeah.
hiring for the team, obviously.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I totally agree. And here's the vision for how personalization could work at scale using candidate relationships and history, which, by the way, like you only get the very best like candidate relationships and history context if you have a complete source of truth, which is unlocked by having like an all-in-one recruiting platform where all the pieces are fully integrated. So like that's going back to like that's our vision for AI needs to be built in an AI first way into an all-in-one recruiting platform, and we're the only ones that are thinking that way and doing that. Um, the vision here
Historical data.
is
Okay. I got
because
you.
that way you get complete data on every
Yeah,
person
yeah.
that
Somebody
matters
you
to you.
forgot about because you're human 18 months ago applied for the job and it's perfect, but they didn't reapply because they got disappointed
Yeah,
last time and they never really came back, even though they're still interested. If you called them, but you don't remember to call them because you're looking at 2,000 applicants, the AI
totally.
should be able to say, yo, tap, tap, tap. I'm trying to tap the screen. Tap, tap. Hey, Shally, remember the clip? Microsoft clip. Tap,
Yeah.
tap, tap. I see you're looking for a candidate. You should consider this. I'm literally imitating the clip now, but you know what I'm saying.
No, exactly. That's right. And like the AI should know that somebody interviewed a year and a half ago. They should know that you met them on campus like 4 years ago. It should know that somebody attended one of your recruiting events last year. It should know that like Shally on the recruiting team, like, talked to this person 9 months ago. It should even be able to like understand little nuggets from those conversations, from the interview feedback, and like work those things in to the personalized outreach. And so that's like where I think this stuff is headed. Hyper personalized re-engagement
Yep.
based on the full
It's the
relationship
historical context.
history and
Yeah.
context. And like that's been like the biggest treasure that every company is sitting on top of and doesn't know how to unlock.
Yeah.
Here's some stats for you.
Okay.
This is going to blow your mind. For a down market company, a few hundred people, already 30 to 50% of the people they hire are already in their CRM or their ATS from a previous touch point, right? And so that's but everybody's going and spending more recruitment ads to get them into the process, or like sourcing them manually on LinkedIn instead of just tapping into their database. For a enterprise customer, thousands of employees, 10,000s of employees,
Mm-hmm.
50 to 70% of the people they hire are already in their system.
Yeah.
But like nobody's able to unlock those people. And so they're like going and redoing all the work. It's almost as if in recruiting, we suffer from amnesia. And so
But that's because of the way that there's some regulatory things that apply, and people that are not deep into the business aren't as aware of the regulatory um, things that prevent us from having a historical knowledge. The amnesia is sometimes mandated.
it is mandated for highly regulated companies, especially in EMEA, that are really large, that uh, are a little bit too risk adverse. Sorry,
But
that's my
there's a way
hot
to
take.
use
Yeah,
memory correctly, and there's a way to use memory incorrectly.
there
And
is.
what's missing is the context, right? Because I
Exactly.
tell you that, for example, every time I go to the gym, I'm sore for 3 days. So the AI can interpret that as never go to the gym, so you're not going to be sore.
Yeah.
Or it can interpret it as
No, totally.
what are you doing that makes you sore, and what can we do so you stop getting sore when you go to the gym because you want to keep going to the gym? It really does matter. And this, again, we'll go back to that decision support.
Yep.
But
Oh, no, 100%. But even the companies that are highly regulated that can't keep all their hiring data, they maybe have data retention policies that they have to like
yeah,
delete those records after a
we
certain
can
amount of time.
still
They can still
retain the
keep
historical context without the.
some historical context without the like sensitive hiring data that can still help them understand who this person is to them, what kinds of touch points they've had, even if the details of like those touch points that have
I
to be
learned
merged.
something really interesting when I was building the global team, because I was actually I sourced and hired our chief privacy officer, who was a
Mhm.
former black hat engineer, and I spent a couple of years working with her to help build some of this out globally. And what I found was really interesting that we ended up after going through some a lot of different variations and analysis. There definitely is a right to be forgotten in this GDPR concept where like I want to be deleted.
Mhm.
However, there are two pieces of information or two types of information that A cannot be deleted or shouldn't ever be deleted, and B should not be handed to the candidate when they ask for the information. So even with privacy laws, as a company, we have trade secrets. And it doesn't matter what your privacy rights are, there are things that are trade secret to us that we cannot share with you.
Yep.
Even if you ask for all the information we have about you, we have to redact it and not give that to you. And that's
Totally.
fine because otherwise you're violating our rights for confidentiality of our trade secrets. And then the other
Yep.
thing is there are some things that we need to retain no matter
Yes.
what for
Totally.
legal,
Because otherwise,
not privacy, but legal, which,
yeah.
so, do you break the law or do you violate privacy? It's like, I'm gonna
Yeah,
borrow
no,
your
it's
taxi. Sorry.
yeah. I mean, that's the funny thing about all these privacy. They are in direct conflict with like the legal reason why you need an ATS in the first place. Like going back to your point about
Right.
like why these ATSs were invented as just like these legal
Exactly.
databases for compliance. Like you need to save a lot of those records legally. Yeah, I
Yeah.
never. That's cool. I never. I mean, I knew both of those independent data points, but I never put them together.
Yeah.
Cool.
It took me. It was a very long set of conversations and lots of slack time with my um, CPO. But I'll tell you the fact of the matter that she had this black hat background, and I do too, secretly. Nobody knows. Um, we both arrived at some of these ethical conclusions that were like, okay, there are some things that we simply cannot do, and we're just not going to. We would rather pay the fine, but really that shouldn't exist. That fine shouldn't exist because we understand about removing the PII that would be sold to others and used in other ways, but there are some pieces that you can't do that with. I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you about founder blind spots.
Hmm.
You said before that hiring should be treated like a product function, and there's been a few leaders in the business world that have said that, which I really align with because it's we've talked about it. It's not sales. Recruiting is
Yep.
not sales. Recruiting is not marketing, and it's not operations. It's a little bit of all of those, but really treating recruiting like a product makes a lot of sense. So if the candidate experience were an app, what feature request do you wish more founders would prioritize, but just never do?
Mm. Yeah. So there's a few things. So, I mean,
Yeah.
the first like the one that I think should be table stakes
Okay.
feature request. If we just think about candidate experience as a product, is every
Right. You're
single
hiring
applicant
people. It's what
you're
it's
hiring.
what
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, and I just think it's like every single applicant should hear back about whether they're entering process or you're rejecting them for a role.
there's absolutely no reason for them to get like there isn't any. There isn't
Yeah.
any. There are legal reasons for not saying certain things, you
Hmm.
know. Um, even if you made the right decision, like for example, I was talking to a candidate, very nice lady, yesterday, and I'm hiring for a position that is with a cabinet level organization, and she very straightforwardly just up and said, "So listen, I heard you can't hire Chinese anymore." There was a memo. I don't know if
Mm.
you're aware. Um,
Mm.
there's a whole law about this now. And she's like, "I heard you can't hire Chinese people," and I'm like, "Okay, so here's the thing. We have a lot of Chinese people that work here. We're very international. Yes, we can hire Chinese people. There's nothing wrong with you being Chinese. There's nothing against that. But there's a specific job that the job itself requires by law that you be a citizen, naturalized or otherwise. You
Yep.
have to be a citizen or you cannot do this job because of the government, not because of us, but So we can hire you for 99% of the jobs and being Chinese has got nothing to do with it. But in this one case, we can't hire you not because you're Chinese, but because you're not a US citizen. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you're Chinese or Colombian, like me,
Yeah.
or we can't hire you for this job because of that. And so there are certain things that we put in our documentation that, eh, like your citizenship status, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm kind of getting at here? You
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
so you're right. And so if our system were to automatically reject her and say, yeah, we unfortunately are not going to be able to consider you for this position because you're Chinese, that's
Mm.
just wrong. You don't do that because it's not
Yeah.
right. It's not because she's Chinese at all.
I know, and I could totally see AI saying that too. Like, and that's where this stuff gets kind of
Right. But
risky.
we
If
should, by all
yeah,
means, say, thanks for your application. We're very interested in you. You have the background we want. We approached you. We recruited you. We
yep,
spoke with you. And after speaking with you, we determined that you do not have one of the requirements, which
yep,
is you must be a citizen. Therefore, we can't proceed with the application. but we would really, truly, honestly like you to apply for other jobs where citizenship is not required. Your
Yeah,
national
yeah.
origin has nothing to do with it.
No, totally. And I mean, I actually,
But we
so
don't
it's
do
so
that, do we? We
interesting.
never do.
We don't do that. We don't do that. I mean, it's hard to do that at scale. I mean, that's the hard part is like um, it takes so much time. Like, recruiters are getting thousands of applicants for a role. Each recruiter is managing 55% more recs than they were 3 years
Oh,
ago
come
on
on. That
average.
fucking pisses me off, man. Dude, let me put it this way. You could be sitting
And,
in the inbox with 2,000 applicants and you could still do the right thing. There's nothing preventing you from doing that. What's happening is they're marking everybody that they didn't look at as other candidates more qualified. And so you can't
oh
send a
yeah,
rejection letter saying,
I
hey, we
know.
didn't consider you because you weren't qualified, when in fact, you didn't consider them.
No, I know exactly. And so, but here's the thing. So recruiters are managing 55% more recs. They have 3x the inbound, compared to 3 years ago. And so most recruiters just aren't getting through the full backlog, and so they can't get back to anyone for that exact
That's
reason.
not true. I built
Um,
that system where you can. Here's what you do. You have a
yeah,
category that says, I didn't look at you because we closed the rec.
yeah,
And that person, those 2,000 applicants get a message saying, thank you for
totally.
your interest. We were not able to review your background because we've made an offer and closed the rec or whatever. And this position is now closed. And we did not, your application didn't come in time. By the time we got your application, we were already over here.
So
So you weren't considered, but we want to encourage you to apply for other jobs. This is not a rejection letter. This is just to inform you that this position has been filled and we couldn't get to you.
yeah, and so that is one option, but it's still a bad candidate experience. I mean, it's way better than not hearing.
Better than that.
Um, Way better than not hearing. And every company should be doing that because you don't need any
Table
technology to like.
stakes. Table
It's
stakes.
that should be table stakes. But from a candidate experience perspective, if the rec takes 3 months, like, and you don't hear back until the rec was closed and you didn't even get considered, like, that feels pretty shitty. And so, I mean, I
I'm
think
not
this
talking
is
about 3
where
months, buddy. I'm talking
what's
about
that?
like I'm not talking about 3 months. I'm talking about when you close that rec and you're not taking any more applicants. It shouldn't be 3 months later. Why are you sitting on 2,000 candidates for 3 months?
Oh, it happens, man. And so like because like recruiters, like some recs get 10,000 applicants. I mean, maybe people
Stop accepting applicants.
maybe people should
9,000
take it
candidates.
down. Yeah, look, it's tricky. Here's the thing though. I do actually think AI is at the point where it can do basic qualification matches based on like what are the minimum required
Matches but not
qualifications.
declines. That's what you're saying, right? Matches as
Exactly.
in you fit, but not you shouldn't apply, right?
Yeah, totally, totally. But like once somebody applies, based on their resume and based on
You
the
got
job
everything.
requirements, AI. I mean, this is the way our AI works: is you can tell it here are the 5 to 10 like must-have requirements for the role, and AI can actually do a pretty good job of saying, is this person qualified for this requirement? Is it
Right,
qualified for this requirement,
right.
that requirement? And
And
so,
move those forward.
yeah, exactly. So you can bubble up like applicant number 8,000 that's like, boom, like
That's
10
right.
out of 10 requirements.
You get to the
Um,
10,000 candidates that way, and the ones that didn't bubble up were not qualified. And then you can say, these were the qualifications that were missed if you have the ability to track that and automate it.
Bingo. And so I do think AI can we can get to the point where it can actually give every candidate some actionable feedback about why they weren't a good fit for the role, so
I'd love
long as we're
yes,
just doing
absolutely. But that's not AI.
basic qualification
That's
matching.
not AI though.
It's leveraging generative AI
Decision.
to what's that?
It's a logic tree. It's a decision tree.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is. And it's also giving recruiters control because it's like, well, how many requirements is it okay to like be missing
Before
to
you
be able
right.
to put them into the process, but
Right.
also
And which
which
ones are
requirements
the can't miss requirements versus the nice to have?
versus the nice to haves,
Right.
right? And then how many of the nice to haves can they be missing? And so like recruiters still get full control over all that, and they can still like review every single person. It's just like really speeds it up and puts the people that
It speeds
match
it up.
all the
And we've
requirements.
always been able to do this. We've always been able to do this. Is this just speeds it up? So it's really not what
Yeah,
you're suggesting isn't new. What you're suggesting is the right way to do it, and the technology is there to make it easy, but it's still
bingo.
not getting done.
no, the technology is now at the point where it's like 50 times easier to
But it
do
still
that.
doesn't get done. Why?
It's not because recruit. Oh, sorry. Here's why it's not getting done.
We know we can, but we don't.
We know we can. So there's two reasons. One is folks are still worried about risk, even if the AI is good. If it missteps, like in a small percentage of the time, the legal team is worried about risk. That's thing number one.
Bias and yep. Right.
Thing number two is a lot of recruiting teams, and this is probably top down from like the C level, they're not caring about candidate experience the way they used to. And honestly, it's like it's kind of short-sighted. But I do think a lot of recruiters are just like worried about filling recs, and they're worried that if they don't hit their goals, they're going to get fired. And everybody still has a bunch of PTSD from all the layoffs.
Yeah, that's gonna
And
be
so,
a lot to recover
and
from.
and so like recruiter, it's created the shift of like recruiting as an industry reverting back to transactional hiring instead of like caring about candidate experience and the long-term relationships.
That's insightful.
But you
Yeah.
can't blame them. You can't blame
I'm not blaming
recruiters.
anybody. I'm just saying
So,
we have all these.
oh,
We had these tools before and we didn't use them, but it was because it was hard. We have the tools now; they're better and they're easier, and we're still not using them. And it's like
I know.
nothing changed, and everything changed, but nothing changed.
I
Um,
know. So here's a cool thing though. I was talking to a TA leader at Transform, and she was sharing with me large enterprise company. They hire tens of thousands of like frontline workers, like a quarter or something like that. And they had leveraged AI to actually automate a bunch of the process. And one of the key things that they were using AI to automate was getting every single candidate a piece of feedback about why, like the qualifications,
it's
why
so
they didn't meet the basic qualifications.
frontline
And it was
workers.
so cool.
I've had a guest on the show before. I'm going to see if I'll send you the recording.
Yeah.
He's an expert in frontline. I think the two of you should connect because I think it's a blind spot for a lot of leaders, if frontline workers, and he's got a really tight formula that can apply. It's not the same for everyone, cookie cutter, but it can
Yep.
apply to a lot of scenarios, and that's smart. Immediate response is key. So there's two things in what you just said that make it very smart,
Yep.
and sometimes they get missed. One of them is that's got to be right away, like immediately.
Yes. Yes.
We talked about 3 months later. It doesn't matter what the feedback is. Shit, man, you tell me
Exactly.
3 months later why I didn't get the job. I don't give a fuck.
I know.
I
I've already had
don't
such
even
a
know
bad
who you are
experience.
anymore, right?
Yeah.
So immediate is one of it, and then the other one is it's something valuable, constructive, productive. In this case,
Yes.
but it could be something else. Sorry, I just boomed my. It could be something else of value. I mean, you could even do something like if you're a retail products company, you can say, "Hey, I'm so sorry we didn't, you didn't fit the bill, but here's a cup of coffee. Obviously, if you make coffee, whatever, like
Yeah.
just something back that says we are paying attention. We're yes, you're number
Love that.
9,999, but we value all 9,999, some with something. Like it's
Totally.
dehumanizing to just get a thank you for your application, never hear back again.
No, totally. And I actually think this is where your approach can come in as well. So like they give feedback when somebody's not doesn't meet the minimum requirements for the role, and they use AI for that, which is so cool. They get back to people really quickly. But then for the folks where it's like, oh, they did meet the requirements, but we filled all the roles that we have right now, they send them a separate email, and then those folks get put into a nurture database because they're going to be opening up 10,000 more of these roles next quarter, and they'd love to hire this person or interview them at least to see if they're a good fit.
Right, that's a
And I
really
just
good
thought,
point, Steve. So you're saying it's not goodbye forever. It's no for now, but maybe later. Oh, or
yeah,
or it may be goodbye forever. It may be like, hey, this is just never going to fit. That's great. I want to know that. But it could also be, is it going to fit right now? Or
mhm,
there's a better fit. Like any one of those is better than nothing. But I think that there's a good little something in there to provide in that feedback. Is this never? Don't bother applying, or is
mhm.
this we'd like to see you apply and be honest about it?
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's like something that could be unlocked for the industry in the next few years. The tech is already getting there. It's already quite good. And for some use cases, it's really good. And it was inspirational to hear this story about this enterprise company that was doing this. And guess why it happened? It
Oh, wow.
happened because no, top down like mandate, we care
Okay.
about candidate experience
Okay. Yeah.
and we want to give every single candidate
That's
actionable
all right. Yeah.
feedback. And so it's got to come from the top. So, anyways,
It does. It really
yeah,
does. You're absolutely right.
yep,
Dude, an hour has gone by. And first of all, I wish we had 2 more hours. Like I could I'm gonna have you back if that's okay. But I do
yeah.
have a question that everybody needs to answer who's a guest of the show.
Oh
Normally
boy.
I have two. I'm gonna let you off with just one though. That question is, who should be our next guest?
Oh, all right. You should invite Luke Eaton
Okay.
onto the show. Do you know Luke?
Um, of
Super sharp guy. So Luke is really cool because, like, all right, there's a lot of like influencers on LinkedIn. Um, Many of them are optimizing a little bit too much for impressions and like followers and stuff like that. And actually, you know where that reverts to in our industry? Everybody starts making candidate facing content
yep.
and they start to talk about layoffs and like remote friendly companies because that's what candidates want to hear. Because guess what? There's thousands more candidates than there are recruiters. Luke started this journey
Right.
a few years ago where he said, I'm going to be a content creator and I'm just going to like not care about any of that stuff. And I'm just going to make helpful content for recruiters, recruiting leaders, and rec ops, even though like it's not going to get me as many likes, it's not going to get me as
Mm.
many followers. And he puts out such amazing, like actionable content based on
Oh, I love
experience
that.
being in the trenches. And so he's like the most unknown, um,
I love that.
best content creator. Have him on. You're gonna love him.
Is it so? Is this Luke Eaton from the UK or
Yep.
yeah? Okay, so he's at Matter, I think, right now.
Yeah, exactly. I just had him on a little like real talk
Perfect.
panel that I hosted, and he's awesome.
Definitely gonna reach out to him for sure. I'm gonna have to invite you back because I had a couple questions that we never got to.
Let's do it.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot for being on the show today. Very, very special, folks. We are coming back next week, and our topic for next week is going to be actually we're going to have Rusty Roof, who is some of you might remember him from way, way back. He was a industry thought leader back in the day who's now turned into a CEO and angel investor and advisor. Look him up. Rusty Roof, that's Rueff, not Rooff, Rueff. So it's going to be a really fun one. Big shot for sure. Steve, we're definitely going to have you back for sure. And until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves, be kind to yourselves, and